Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig Garber. You know me as host of the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, but when I'm not interviewing world-class guitar players, I'm busy helping clients with their marketing. In fact, since March of 2000, I've helped over 300 clients in 108 different industries all over the world sell everything from $20 books to $5,000 seminar seats and everything in between. I even authored a book about my experience called How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. Now, if you own or operate a business, ask yourself the following marketing-related questions and be honest with your answers. Are you generating fresh new qualified leads on a daily basis? Is your website generating enough sales? And if not, do you know why? Is your advertising effective? Is it predictably and reliably making you several multiples of what you're spending on it? And lastly, are you consistently communicating with your email list? Or do you have an email list of prospects and customers, but you have no idea what to say to them, how often to say it, or how to make money with this list? If you need solutions for these marketing problems, then you need to book a one-on-one marketing strategy session with me. After this strategy session, you'll know how to speak to and make money with your email list, how to use your website to attract customers and clients who are ready to buy from you now, and how to sell your goods and services for top dollar and at much higher profit margins than your competition. Listen, stop hoping things will get better on their own. Hope is not a very good business strategy. Instead, book a marketing strategy session with me by going to everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing and find out if your business meets the 5 criteria you need to qualify for this service. Again, that's everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing. Thanks for listening. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. And sometimes before I interview someone, I get to meet them and spend some time with them. And all I could tell you is this guest that we have on today, not only is he an incredible guitarist who's had a really robust career, but he is just the definition of gentle and kind. I mean, I've had limited exchanges with our guest today, Chris Leuzinger, and every time I walked away, it was like, I've known the guy for 20 years. It's just like, like I had a question about a guitar and I happened to randomly ask him and he was like so kind and he looked into it. And by the way, Chris, there it goes.
Yeah, I saw that. It looks very beautiful.
I just want to welcome Chris to the show. I really appreciate it. Chris has been a Nashville session guitarist for over 40 years. He's best known for playing on every one of Garth Brooks CDs, which have sold over 130 million copies. He's played on many other gold and platinum selling CDs for a variety of artists. Some of the artists he's recorded with are Emmy Lou Harris, Hal Ketchum, Montgomery Gentry, Randy Travis, Kenny Rogers, George Jones, Leon Russell, Brooks and Dunn, George Strait, Hank Williams Jr., Seals and Crofts. Wow, I haven't heard that name in a long time. That's nice. Richie Furay, Julio Iglesias, Mattea and Crystal Gayle. Wow. Chris, are you sure you're in the right place here with me?
Yeah, I'm just myself.
He grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, and he started playing guitar when he was 9 years old. In his teens, he played in cover bands and club bands, playing mostly pop, rock, and R&B. Early influences on guitar were great blues players like Steve Cropper, Mike Bloomfield, Peter Green, Mick Taylor, Eric Clapton, Dave Mason, and Steve Winwood. Man, Mick Taylor doesn't get mentioned enough, you know?
Oh, no. No, he was something else.
Amazing.
Definitely.
Well, you know what's
with John and with the Stones,
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But you know what? I've listened to some of his solo records, and I hate to say it wasn't. He's much better as a sideman.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Interesting. And of course, like everyone else, the Beatles and the Stones. He made some brief moves to Washington, D.C. and New York City, and then when he was 21, he moved to Nashville to play with some friends in a band. After the move to Nashville, he started discovering country music, and a publisher named Juan Contreras took a liking to his band and started introducing him to some people, one of which was Norbert Putnam, who owned Quad Studios at the time. Through their association with Norbert, it led him to his first road gig with the amazing Dobie Gray in 1974, when his song Drift Away was a big hit. After his run with Dobie, they started playing on the road with the Canadian Indian artist Buffy Sainte Marie, and also became the rhythm section for Cowboy Jack Clement's ragtime band. What iconic names in there, Chris.
Yeah, it was quite a trip. It was a lot of fun.
By this time, he'd started working his way into the recording studio, and he started playing on some recording sessions, including his first couple of number one hits with Eddie Rabbitt. Did you know, I'm sure you know Michael Spriggs?
Yes, definitely.
He played with Rabbitt a long time, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. After that, what's that?
Great guitar player, Michael.
He is a great guitar player. After that, he met Alan Reynolds, producer Alan Reynolds, and that started a long relationship of making a lot of wonderful music. Alan started using Chris on many of his recording projects, and he's been a mentor to Chris. One of the artists he was producing at the time was Crystal Gayle. She was looking for a touring band at the time, and Alan recommended she hire Chris's band to tour with her. This turned into an 11-year-long awesome gig with Crystal. And right at that time, they began working with her. Her career took off and resulted in them headlining really big shows, traveling to many countries overseas, and doing a lot of TV shows, including Carson Show 3 times, Midnight Special 2 times. I don't hear that name too often. That rings the nostalgic bells over there. Midnight Special 2 times, once with Crystal as the host, Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve, and 2 network TV specials. In the meantime, Chris's studio work was growing. He was playing on some of Crystal's hits, as well as working for a lot of other producers and artists. In 1988, he decided he needed to leave the road life and concentrate exclusively on his session career. Not long after that, he got a call from Alan about a new artist he was going to work with named Garth Brooks. They went in and recorded 4 songs with Garth, 2 of which were If Tomorrow Never Comes and Much Too Young. And these initial sessions were just to see if Garth and Alan would gel and make a good team. The label liked those first 4 sides, and they got the go-ahead as a group to collectively finish an album. And as they say, the rest is history. Garth's career really took off, and he and Alan decided they had a great team of musicians, and they decided not to change anything. So now, 25 years later, even though Alan's retired, Chris is still recording with Garth. He won't mention all the accolades and records broken during Garth's career because that's documented in many other places, but he just feels very blessed to be the guy sitting in the electric guitar chair in that band, and it's been a wonderful relationship with Garth and an opportunity to make some great music. And that's also led to him working with many other great artists. Chris feels that one of the best things about working in the studio in Nashville is that there's so many great musicians to work with, and he feels really fortunate to be able to play with so many fine players and that he's been able to maintain a session career for as long as he has. And Chris, your name has come up in conversation probably 5 or 6 or 7 different times with your peers, and everybody has like such reverence, for your playing and for you as a person, just to let you know that. So that's a feather in your cap, probably.
Thank you.
Nice to hear. So, man, thank you so much for coming to the show. I really appreciate your time.
You bet. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for your interest, and not just in interviewing me, but in all the other guys and players here. It's really nice that you're taking time and energy to just draw attention to a lot of really a bunch of my friends and fine guys and players. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Some real good stories out there. Mm-hmm. Hey, so what prompted you to move to Nashville from West Palm?
Well, I was playing in a band in Florida, and I had some friends that had already moved to Nashville and had a band up here, and they called us up, said they needed a drummer and a guitar player, and at that time our band in Florida was splitting up, so the drummer and I just jumped in the van and drove up to Nashville to join my friends up here and play in a group up here.
So it was really like serendipity.
Yes, it was. It was. And those are kind of the days when I didn't have too many attachments or anything, and you could just jump in the van and go wherever you wanted to, and always living in band houses. So, wherever you went, you'd be living, in a house with 5 or 6 other band guys. And that made it easier, too.
Yeah, so you could swing it financially and not have to stress out. Yeah, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Where were you playing when Juan Contreras discovered you guys?
It's hard for me. I can't really remember the exact time we met Juan. And I guess we were just playing some local clubs around Nashville. And, I can't remember the exact instant where he heard us, but he just heard us playing at a club somewhere and just kind of took an interest to us. And he started introducing us to some other players and just other people. And, in that process, like you read, he introduced us to Norbert Putnam, which was a big deal for us at the time because Norbert, owned Quad Studios, and there was a lot of stuff going on there. And Norbert was a very well-known producer, bass player.
So he was literally just out at a club watching you, and as things happen in Nashville, he knew a guy who knew a guy.
Right.
That's amazing. That's just so cool to hear this story like over and over and over again in various different formats,
Yeah, it is. I mean, had he not done that, who knows? I might still be playing clubs in Nashville,
You don't know, and it's all
somewhere else,
I always find these. One of the many reasons I find these calls so interesting is because, you can't connect the dots moving forward, but when you look at them and you hear how they connected, it's in the big picture of life, it's miraculous how things happen.
Yes, it is.
You were in that club. What if you guys didn't play at that hour that he was there? Or
right,
it's just
exactly.
like the things that have to line up to make stuff happen. It's just pretty impressive,
Yeah.
So you've played with some really iconic people, and I want to know for each one of these artists, and I didn't put Garth down, but we'll include Garth as well. If you could tell me how you got the gig and a cool or funny story that you might have to share, and anything you might have learned from the experience, like either about playing, about entertaining, about business, or about life in general. And
okay.
Let's start with Buffy Sainte Marie.
Well, Buffy, Norbert Putnam, who owned Quad, was producing some records on Buffy at the time. And while he was using a lot of, older, more ensconced Nashville session players to play on the sessions, but Buffy needed a road band to go on the road with her and perform. And we just happened to be hanging around the studio at the right time. And actually, we had just come off of the gig with Dobie Gray, which we got from hanging around Quad Studios. And Norbert kind of hooked us up with Buffy. And, that was just an incredible gig because she was just such a great artist. And, with her, some of the stuff we got to do, a lot of traveling Australia and a lot up in Canada because she's from Canada. But we played like a TV special in Toronto where Harry Belafonte was the host.
Oh, wow.
That just blew me away because that's the music I listened to when I was growing up in my parents' house. And to get to meet Belafonte and hang out with him. And he was a generally sweet guy. And then on the other hand, we got to play some like Indian reservations with her because she's an Indian, and just got to see some really cool things, like way up in Saskatchewan and way out, near Alberta, and just some incredible experiences there. And then Buffy decided to do an album with the producer Henry Louis, which was involved with the Mamas and the Papas and actually produced Joni Mitchell's albums like Hissing of Summer Lawns and some things like that. So she took us out to L.A. for a matter of weeks to do this album, and at that point, I hadn't been in the studio that much. I was still pretty green, but she wanted her touring band to play on some of the records. So I got to go out to L.A. and record with this incredible producer, Henry Louis, and meet, he had a guitar player out there that he wanted kind of his ringer he wanted there with the road guys named Ben Benet, who was a well-renowned session player in L.A., and I got to meet him and just learned a whole lot about, playing in the studio, and it was an incredible experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, I can't believe that was like your first big tour, and you got to see and do everything.
Yeah, it was quite a deal for us, especially I was probably about 24, 25 at the time, and it was quite a deal.
Well, especially getting to play on the album and coming out of Nashville, where that's just not taboo, basically, right?
Yeah.
And here you are, you're playing on the album, and you're the touring guy, and you're a kid.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I'll tell you one funny story is Henry liked the stuff we recorded, but, he'd just gotten done doing Hissing of Summer Lawns with like Larry Carlton, John Guerin. So one night, Joni Mitchell came to the studio while we were recording, and we all took a break and actually got to sit and listen to Hissing of Summer Lawns.
Wow.
In the control room, which was pretty amazing experience in itself. But then after we were done and went home, they ended up recording about 5 or 6 more sides with Larry Carlton and John Guerin and everything. So I think Henry, being a nice guy as he was also trying to impress on Buffy, maybe we ought to do part of this album with some seasoned pros.
Yeah.
So he ended up on about half of the record, and they ended up on half the record. So it was kind of cool for me to be on a record with Larry Carlton.
Yeah, you'll take it, right? Yeah, take that every day as a 24-year-old kid. Why not? That's awesome. Yeah. Really a nice story. How about Cowboy Jack Clement? And can you also explain for some people who may not know who he is, who he was and what a character the guy was?
Yeah, Cowboy was a one-of-a-kind person as a producer, an individual, as a, just a songwriter and everything. And he was actually an engineer for Sam Phillips at Sun Records. And that was back when, Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins and everybody were recording there. And actually, Cowboy was the one that discovered Jerry Lee Lewis. It was not Sam Phillips. Cowboy happened to be there when Jerry Lee came in. And Cowboy was the one that pushed the record button when they did Great Balls of Fire and all that. So, quite a history. And then when Cowboy moved to Nashville, he had a lot of just classic records. He produced all of Charlie Pride's hits. He was the one that produced like Ring of Fire on Johnny Cash and used the trumpets on there, which, Johnny said he always wanted to use stuff like that, but the label never let him do it. And Cowboy, was responsible for that. And he produced some great sides on Waylon Jennings and had a long relationship with Johnny Cash. But anyway, we were just, once again, I got into a lot of good gigs by just hanging out. And we met Cowboy and we're hanging out around his place. And we had this little 4-piece band, same band that actually went out with Buffy Sainte Marie. And it was kind of more of a rock band. And Cowboy was looking for something different to do. So he thought it'd be fun to have a rock and roll rhythm section. And he paired it up with 3 horns. And another guy, Jim Rooney, who was kind of a folk, ensconced folk guy from up in New York, who ended up producing a lot of great records, including co-producing Hal Ketchum. But that's where I met Jim Rooney, was with Cowboy. And he put together this Cowboys Ragtime Band, which was just a wild conglomeration of music, everything from the Marine Corps hymn to Cowboy reciting Shakespeare to playing Waylon songs. It was just, and we would rehearse every day over at his house. And, it was just quite an experience. And then we'd play downtown. George Jones had a club called the Possum Holler, and we'd play down there.
Wow, that's so cool. Now, someone told me that Cowboy had these rules, Cowboy's rules in the studio.
Yeah, he did.
Okay,
he did.
So tell me some of the rules, because they were supposedly pretty out there.
Some of the rules I remember is, always be on time. And one of the main ones is don't bring your troubles into the session, or into the rehearsal of the gig. Leave your troubles at home. And I'm trying to think of the others. He never liked anybody to wear headphones.
Headphones, right. That's what I was told. He said he hated, he was like a headphone vigilante.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And those are the main ones that I remember.
That's cool, man. How about Crystal Gayle?
Well, we got the gig with Crystal through Alan Reynolds, who was one of the main mentors for me in this town, besides Juan Contreras. And once again, it was the same rhythm section that had worked with Buffy and Cowboy. And when Crystal went to hire a band, Alan recommended that instead of hiring individual musicians, that he hire our complete rhythm section. And, one of the funny things about that was we liked Crystal's music, but we were still more into rock and pop and stuff like that. And she was obviously country at the time. She hadn't quite gotten into her pop stage. And so we were wondering about it. We just thought, well, we'll take the gig if they offer us this blank amount of money, whether we work or not. And when we had the first meeting with her husband, Bill Gatzimas, who was her manager, and Crystal, they offered us that exact amount, whether we worked or not.
That was awesome.
We figured that was pretty much a sign, and we took the gig.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still in touch with these guys? Because you played, the randomness, again, of the likelihood of all of you staying together through these completely different artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still, still in touch. Dwight Scott, the keyboard player, we still play in a blues band these days. And Spady Brannon, the bass player, I actually met him when I was 19, and we played, in lots of bands together before we moved to Tennessee. And we're still in touch. And the drummer, Vic Mastriani, is still playing here in Nashville. We don't talk as much anymore. We're just kind of out of pocket with each other. But a great drummer, great guy.
Now, Spady was from West Palm with you?
Yes, he is. Uh-huh.
I was just introduced or referred to him the other day. That's funny that you mentioned his name. Yeah, that's cool.
He's a great guy.
Now let's talk about Garth.
Okay.
Same thing.
Well, I got the opportunity to work with Garth through Alan Reynolds. And, by that point, I'd already been working with Alan, playing on Kathy Mattea's records and Crystal's records and some different things. And so, it's just one day we got a call from I think it was Mark Miller was booking sessions for him at the time. And he just said, we got this new artist named Garth Brooks we want to work with. And so we're just going to do 4 sides, like you said in the intro, and see what happens. So I didn't think anything of it, really. It was just like another session call. Of course, anytime I got a call from Alan, I was looking forward to it because I knew it was going to be good. But I'll tell you one funny story about that is when I got off the road with Crystal, which is like I got off the road right a few months before we went in with Garth, and I had set up a Fostex 8-track studio in my basement and was doing demos for people where I programmed drums, played bass, guitar, everything. And about 2 weeks before we did the first sessions, Garth came over to my little house in East Nashville and sang a demo in my basement.
You're kidding. And, how cool.
And he said, yeah, you're going to be playing on my sessions in a couple weeks. And, we shook hands and he sang a song or two down there.
That's so cool.
That's what he was doing at the time. He was a demo singer. I was, besides, working other jobs, he was singing demos for people.
When this is an awkward question, I hope it doesn't put you on the spot. When and if it does, you tell me. We'll skip it. When he came down there, did you think anything? It was just another day, right? It was,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's so wild.
I knew he was a good singer. But, there's so many people that started out here being demo singers. His wife, Trisha, Yearwood, was a great demo singer. Kathy Mattea, Joe Diffie, all those people before they became artists were singing demos for people. Larry Stewart, from Restless Heart, used to be the go-to guy if you wanted to get a Lee Greenwood cut. You'd hire Larry Stewart to sing the song because it sounded kind of like Lee Greenwood. He could sound like that. So
wow. Could this have happened today, or, the fact that Garth became Garth at the time, how much of that had to do with, record label sponsoring and being willing to support artists and throw money at things like that?
Well, it had a lot to do because at one point, I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff, but I've read about it. And Garth usually leaves the business stuff out of the studio when we work together. But I understand that at one point, Jimmy Bowen, the head of the record label at the time, realized, he went to see Garth live and realized he had something really, really special. And so he did decide to dedicate a lot of the record label's resources. But, the other thing is Bob Doyle, Garth's manager, they were all in. And from what I understand, one of the first singles, they actually put a lot of independent promotion money into it also, trying to get played. And the fact that nobody's buying it, you couldn't sell 130 million CDs now.
Right.
Nobody's buying CDs, and you can't, that's impossible. So, Taylor Swift, a few people are selling in the millions, but, it's impossible to do the kind of sales that Garth did.
Yeah.
These days.
Because they don't, and the record label doesn't have the resources to say, hey, we're going to throw this much money at an individual. I don't think they go on the limb and to do that anymore. It's a limited amount, that they're willing to shell out anyway. Right,
exactly.
When you decided that it was time to get off the road, was it tough to leave Crystal's band?
Yeah, I could say Bill and Crystal, Bill, her husband, manager, and Crystal were just the sweetest folks ever. And, I had a wonderful 11 years working with them. And actually, when I went into his office and gave my notice, when I walked out, I was like, what were you thinking? That was the craziest thing you've ever done, but, I had been missing some recording sessions that were very important. Like I had been recording with Eddie Rabbitt and David Malloy, the producer, called me to go do the sessions in Caribou Ranch where they recorded Driving My Life Away and everything. And I had to turn that down because I was on the road with Crystal.
Yeah.
And it just started making me think that maybe I needed to make a change, and if I was ever going to make a change, that was the time to do it.
How did you know? Like, what was going on that said now is the time to do it? Because it would have been just easy to say or to assume, hey, man, I'll be getting these calls for a while. But you knew that you had a feeling that that was the right time. What was going on?
Well, it's just, when you start missing opportunities like that, I started thinking about the big picture, and I had already been on the road with her for 11 years and with other artists for 2 or 3 years before that. And I was just thinking in general, do I want to spend the rest of my career on the road, or do I want to take a chance at going at the studio full time? And, when you start missing opportunities like that, the way it is when you're not at a session, Nashville is just, there's so many great players here.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's a simple way to put it.
Totally
so many great players here that if you're not there, somebody else is going to come in and do a great job.
Did you have a family at the time?
I did. Mm-hmm. So it made it a little easier. I didn't have to worry as much about financial security, support family.
Yeah, interesting. Have you toured with Garth as well, or is your role 100% studio?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been 100% studio except for 2 gigs. And this is kind of funny because when the first album came out, Garth hadn't fully assembled his touring band yet. And he had these 2 gigs booked, and one was in Johnson City, Tennessee, to open for the Newgrass Revival.
Oh, wow.
So he had his keyboard player, Dave Gant, who is still playing in his touring band and is the leader of the band, but he got Milton Sledge, Mike Chapman, and myself, and Dave, and we rehearsed in the basement of the publishing company, and then we all jumped in a van, and Garth actually drove the van over to Johnson City, and we opened Newgrass Revival, and nobody knew who he was, and nobody paid much attention. Then we packed up, and he drove the van home.
That's great. Good story, man.
And then we did one other gig up in Detroit with him that was same thing. Nobody we flew that day, but nobody knew who he was at the time, and so it wasn't much of a big deal.
Wow. That's a pretty good show, Garth opening up for Newgrass Revival.
Yeah.
That's not getting your money's worth on that ticket.
Yeah, it is. But, as smart as he is, he remembered those guys, and when it came time to do Baton Rouge, that's who he had playing. We cut the track for Baton Rouge, but he had all of them come in and participate in that record too.
That's awesome. Really cool story.
Big records.
That's Pat Flynn?
Yeah, Pat Flynn and Sam Bush, Bela Fleck, and John Cowan.
I got Pat coming on the show, I think, next month, so I'll revisit that story with him.
Ask him about that.
I will. Yeah. I totally will. So you've been with Garth now close to 30 years, which is, by the way, I want to backtrack 1 second. You said 8-track tape. For millennials listening, that's an old...
Well, yeah.
That's a thing that... that's an old... It's like the VHS of recording studio.
Right. Exactly.
So you've been with Garth close to 30 years, which is like in and of itself, just that statement is literally miraculous, because that's just not the life or you don't have an artist sticking around that long. It's very rare. And for the artist to be with the same lead guitar player is, logarithmically more rare. So,
yeah, it's loyalty much, really incredible in this business. Usually you do 2 or 3 records with an artist, and then they move on and they get different producer, different musicians, and change things up. And in this case, it's been really incredible and much appreciated.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes about him and you, because it's both sides. It's like any relationship. It's not one person involved; there's 2 people involved. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you.
What are the most important things you've learned during that times? Lessons, maybe, or takeaways that you've been able to apply to either your life or your music life or your some aspect of your career.
Well, one of the main things that I've learned about working with Garth, and and both Alan together, who produced those records, is just how much more important feel is over perfection. And, I was always very studious I always wanted my parts to be perfect, every note in the right place and everything perfectly in tune. And I think that's a good thing. You have to be able to play like that in the studio. But those guys taught me that, feel is much more important. And, it's just that caused, many times I'd want to redo a part and they'd go, let's listen to it again because what you played is really good. And, after listening to it a couple times, even sometimes if I wanted to fix it, I would go with them and then maybe I'd hear it later and go, they were right. That really feels better. And so I learned that from them. And just, one of the main things about working with Garth that I think he likes about just not my playing, but just about me is that I kind of have the ability to get inside his head. And because he's really a good guitar player himself. And he can't always execute, what he wants to do. And so I've been able to kind of get inside his head, figure out what he's looking for, and execute it. And, I'm just going to give one example. We did a couple of projects ago, we did a song called Tired of Boys. And it was about, a girl running into an older guy, and they're both guitar players. And he said in the solo in the middle, he wanted it to be like a duel between the girl playing younger style and the guy playing older style. And in the beginning, he wanted to start it out like a duel, and then somewhere along the way, they come together, and at the end, they end in harmony. So it was like this little movie of this guy,
Yeah, it's really cool.
So we started and did 2 parts, and together we spent a long time working on it. I think we achieved that. And it's, when someone gives you direction like that, you have to go, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this work tonally and stylistically? And so, I was kind of able to just jump on that idea and make it happen. And when I listened back to it, it was incredible. I would have never thought of doing that myself. And I'm not saying it's incredible because I played it, but just his idea and the way it happened, I would have never thought of that. And it really was a lot of fun, and it was kind of very cool doing it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that story. That's really nice. So you played both parts.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That's got to be really cool.
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of times when you're doing 2 parts in the studio, I try and approach it like 2 different guitar players.
Well, yes. I was thinking that I was thinking that it's probably a challenge because you don't want to sound like yourself over both lines.
Right. Exactly. So that was very cool. And I guess that's, kind of one of the other things I learned from Garth and Alan, in the studio, you're always, striving towards perfection. But in their eyes, they want things much more live sounding, much more energy. Garth would always have, the fiddle player, Rob Hajakis, and steel player, Bruce Boughton, and I, when we were filling, he was just like, just play over each other, don't be so polite, and we want it to sound more live and more like a band. And so I was able to take that into other situations too, in my playing.
It sounds like everything about this situation just really gelled. I mean, you got the right personalities there to, you got a good team. Everybody's on the same page, and everybody sort of like, I think the best relationships, whether it's with friends, bandmates, or husbands and wife, or partners, or whatever, when each of you can give each other more energy, to me, that's a great relationship. When you walk away feeling better, or you get there's a value add to the relationship, like it makes you a better person. In this case, makes you each better musicians. I think that's a great relationship.
I would agree, definitely.
You grew up in West Palm Beach. Oh no, let me ask you this. We talked about it beforehand. You got something you're working on right now?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, let's talk about.
Yeah,
that.
actually, finally. Working on getting my own instrumental CD completed. And I've been very excited about it. A lot of it is songs that I've had laying around forever. Some of them I've cut before many times. And just finally gotten around to feeling like, I've learned enough and my playing's in the right place where I can finally complete something like this. And I've been working on it with a lot of my good studio buddies, a lot of drummer friends of mine, and a lot of keyboard players and bass players, and kind of at the verge of getting it finally getting it completed here. Some of the tracks I cut 9 years ago and never finished, and now I'm kind of pulling those out and finishing them up.
What kind of music?
Well, it's all the stuff I grew up with. First of all, there's nothing country on it, which is interesting because that's the way I make most of my living. But there's some Latin stuff, there's some reggae stuff, there's some R&B stuff, there's some grooving stuff. Stuff that I would consider more atmospheric, more like in a Coldplay vein. And it's definitely not a hot lick CD because I'm not like a hot lick guitar player. I'm not going to dazzle anybody with amazing solos or anything, but I'm much more about melodies and groove. And so I think there's some really nice grooves on it created by my drummer friends and bass player friends. And everything's going to be much more about melodic things and kind of a wide palette. I'm going to have not just guitar, but have some flute, saxophone, some different soloing, keyboards and stuff on it. So it's not just all about the guitar, more about the songs and the compositional aspect of it.
Is there a name of it yet, Chris?
I haven't got one yet.
Okay. Well, by the time this comes out, you have the reveal, and this will be on Chris's website at chrisleuzinger.com, which I'll tell you how to get to later, and where else you could find it. And I'm looking forward to hearing it because we have a lot of your influences or my influences. You mentioned Bloomfield.
Yeah,
I get goosebumps just thinking about that guy. And same thing with Mick Taylor. I mean, these are, I'm a blues guy, and those guys know how to pull your heartstrings.
Yeah. Definitely.
You grew up in West Palm. What was your childhood like?
Well, it was, I'd say, a pretty normal childhood. I had great parents. West Palm was a great place to grow up. It's huge now and kind of crazy, but back then that time I was growing up, it was kind of small town.
Sure.
And it was great.
Yeah. Any brothers or sisters you grew up with?
I have an older brother, 6 years older than I am.
Is he into music?
He's into music, and in fact, we started playing guitar kind of at the same time. But he decided that he didn't want to continue with it. Went to college and went on to a different career.
Cool. And, what kind of work did your parents do?
My dad was an insurance salesman, but the reason we ended up in Florida is he retired early. So
great.
He retired and was at home all the time. My mom was actually a stay-at-home mom. After he passed, she went into secretarial work, but so they were both at home.
That's great. So that's really good, I think, as a kid, if you had that situation where your folks are around all the time. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I've worked here. I've worked at home like 20 years already, at least. So, and my kids are older, 27, 25, and my daughter's 17. And I've seen, it's been good. There's a lot of advantages to being around. Even though I'm working, I'm here,
Mm-hmm. It sure is.
What prompted you to pick up the guitar in the first place at age 9? Was it your brother?
Well, no, I hate to give away my age, but I actually saw Elvis on TV, Ed Sullivan, and just saw him, and I'm not even sure he was really playing.
Right.
But it looked cool, and thought funny. I was focusing on him instead of Scotty Moore, but
wow, come on, because he's the coolest. Who's getting the girls?
Yeah, he was out front, so it just kind of inspired me to ask my dad for a guitar.
That's great. But what have been over the course of your career? What have been some of the you've accomplished so much, but as we both know, there's no free lunch. In anything you're doing, in any career, any business, and this is no different. And I was curious, what are some of the bigger obstacles you had to overcome during this time?
Well, mainly, I would think one of the biggest ones was insecurity, low self-esteem, insecurity, and especially when I got to Nashville and started working in the recording studio. I was thrown in the room with some guys that at the time, like Joe Osborne, Bobby Thompson, Larry London, Matt Gaden, just some classic players. And, I always felt like I was the worst guy in the room. And, just having to overcome that and kind of kind of try to step up and hold my head up there and play play with everybody in the room because when you're insecure, you're not feeling good in the studio, it can cause you to be shy and not step out and do the kind of playing that you need to do. And I think overcoming that, which was a big deal for me.
Yes,
finally comfortable,
Well, you were such a young kid, it would be impossible probably not to be
right,
self-conscious and insecure in that situation. I mean, you got all these veterans around you. That's a tough thing. As far as along those same lines, tuition, we all pay tuition. And I was wondering if you'd be kind enough to maybe share one or two mistakes you might have made along the way and what lessons you got from those mistakes.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and one of the biggest mistakes I made, when I was on the road with Crystal, we had a lot of spare time, which I did spend a bunch of it practicing. But when I realized I was going to get off the road and start working in the studio, I still kind of kept practicing the kind of rock poppy stuff that I was interested in at the time. And I think that time would have been much better spent like picking up a bit of banjo, picking up a bit of mandolin, learning a bit more. I've managed to survive a career in Nashville for 40 years without really knowing how to be a telly blazer. Kind of like Albert Lee or Ricky Skaggs or Brent Mason, that's a style. And same with bluegrass, and I think my time practicing on the road, knowing that I was going to leave the road and become a session player, would have been much better spent becoming more versatile with other instruments, other stringed instruments, and also practicing stuff that would have, enabled me to get more work in different genres of country music.
That's great. Interesting. It's always, when you're a type A personality, no matter what you do, you always find the holes in it. That's just the way it is. I mean, somebody would like never think of that, but that we are all, when you're that personality, we're all our own worst critics, and we're going to find the holes, because, even if we're at, somehow we think we're at 90%, we want to be 95%. If we're 95, we want to be 98, and that's, so I totally get that. Yeah, I really get that. Let's talk gear for a couple minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now that you want to play? Not that's required based on a session you're doing or anything like that. And what other two guitars might round out your top three? Okay,
well, it's kind of funny because if I had a vintage Telly, 63 Telly, which I ended up selling to Garth, and he was playing the other night on the show, which was great. But cool. A few years ago, I bought a Nash Telly.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Those tellies. And it's because I didn't want to take my 63 on some fly dates that I was doing with people. And I fell in love with that Nash. And it just, it feels like home in my hands. And it's relic. It's not one of his more relic ones. It's got a kind of a medium relic thing on it. But it just sounds great. It responds great. And it's, whenever I'm doing live gigs, which is more blues R&B stuff, I pick it up. And in the studio on the countryer stuff and the rock and country stuff, it just performs. And so, and I actually ended up with a Fralin Firebird pickup in the neck position. And
really? I was just about to ask you what the pickup's in there.
Yeah, when I got it, it had a Lawler humbucker in the neck position, which it sounded great, but I was looking for something a little spankier. And I tried a few different. I used to have Firebird pickups in my Tellys in the neck position. And I tried a few different ones and then saw that Fralin was coming out with this one and ended up putting it in there, and it sounded great. And then in the neck, the bridge position is a Lawler, which came with the guitar, and it's real fat. It's not like the real thin, spiky Telly pickups. It's fat, and it sounds really great.
So is this a Firebird pickup specifically made to go in a Telly?
Well, not really. I just Lindy's version of a Firebird pickup, and I have to say I tried a couple others, which I probably should mention, but they just for some reason in that guitar the E string was dead. They weren't wide enough or something. They didn't pick up the high E, and it was kind of weird. It was almost like that string became non-existent. And so I ended up, Lindy's was a little bit wider. And when I put it in there, it was just like magic. And I actually had to have it routed a little bit, I believe, to put in there. But it was like magic.
That's great. That's real cool. So you got the Nash Telly for the guy who never played Telly is his number one. What would you say your number 2 and 3?
Well, I've had a Paul Reed Smith for years that I bought at Corner Music in 1991, I believe, and it's just a basic. It's the extra long scale length, and I've used that guitar on a ton of things. I mean, I played it on Shameless on the solo, and I've used it for real vibey stuff, and it just. That guitar, I can't imagine being without it. I mean, I've used it on so many things, and it just, once again, it responds. It'll sound Gretschy, or it'll sound, you put a bunch of distortion on it, it'll rock really hard, and I love that guitar.
So 2 humbuckers in there, or is it 3 single coils?
2 humbuckers.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you're the original owner on that. You bought that new,
yes,
or you? That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think. If I'm not mistaken, Jeff plays a PRS and loves the same.
Yeah.
He's really fond of his.
Paul is just, I have to give him a shout out. He's one of the most amazing characters I met. And I actually met him because I wanted to thank him for making that guitar.
That's very cool.
I kept Gurman, the local guy, until he finally said, well, Paul's in town this night, come over and meet him. And we actually became friends through that. And he's an amazing character. His passion for guitars and for music, he's a great guitar player himself. So, I mean, it just is, whenever you're around him, you can't help but get fired up about that. And, he supplies, like we just did the Luke Bryan tour, opening for them with the Peach Pickers, and there's a zillion PRSs on that tour. You go see Garth, there's PRSs all over the place. I mean, he really likes the guitar players here, and I know Jeff, uses them too.
That's great. What's your number 3?
Well, it's kind of funny, but I've got a 52 Les Paul, which I've had since I was 19, but I've got this Les Paul.
Wait a minute. You have a 52 Les Paul?
Yeah, I do. Uh-huh. And it's a sweet guitar.
Is that with the double, or is that an SG?
No, it's Les Paul with the 2 P90s.
Wow.
And it was one of the ones that was made with the incorrect neck angle. When they first made them, they had the neck angle was wrong. It was straighter, and they finally figured that out and changed it. And so this was one I actually took it. It has no serial number, but I took it to the factory in Kalamazoo when I was on the road with Crystal, and they said it was 52.
They authenticated it, basically.
Yeah. But all that to say, I've actually got a reissue, 80s Les Paul that is very magical. It's a Sunburst, and it just I actually got that kind of off the wall from a studio that Gibson ended up gifting me that guitar, which was very sweet.
Cool.
And it just it really, it's, once again, it's just super responsive, and it plays itself.
Is that like an R8 or is like a 58 or a 59 or?
Well, it's Sunburst, and it's got the 2 stock pickups in it that they were doing in the 80s, and for some reason, electric guitar is all about the piece of wood.
Sure.
That makes it, whether the wood vibrates right and the guitar. There's a lot of Les Pauls that are deader than a doornail when you play them.
No, absolutely.
And this one just happens to be live and sings really well. And I've thought about putting some real boutique pickups in it or something, but then I thought, well, it sounds great the way it is. I don't think I really need to change anything on it.
There's a company out there that I've heard from a number of people called OX4, OX4, the number 4, and they have these PAF reissues that are supposedly very, very accurate. So if you're ever looking into them, check those out. I've heard from a number of players are pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't believe you have a 52 Les Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only guitar that I've managed. I got that when I was 19 and living in New York, and I've managed to hang on to that one.
What color?
It's funny. It's a Sunburst, but it's a different Sunburst because it was gold top when I got it, and it had the trapeze bridge on it. But I was living in New York. I took it to Dan Armstrong's guitar shop and had the trapeze replaced with a Tune-O-Matic and a stop tailpiece.
Right.
And we were doing a Sunburst, and the guy had the yellow on in the middle, and I was there when he was shading in the outside. And he just got to this very light shading on the outside, and we just said, that looks great. Let's stop and just leave it there. So it's kind of a light tobacco Sunburst. It's one of a kind.
That's really cool, man. Wow, that's an amazing. I've never heard of anybody owning a Les Paul that far back. I've heard 50. You know, I know. Do you know Greg Martin from the Kentucky Headhunters?
I don't.
He's a wonderful guy, but he plays a 58. You know, a genuine 58 Les Paul, and but I've never heard 52. Man, that's congrats. That's awesome. Any cool or interesting stories behind? And you talked about something where you got it from Paul and from Gibson. Behind any of your guitars, any other ones, like some cooler?
Yeah, I've got kind of a funny story about, and this is from Crystal Gayle and her husband Bill. And I don't know if you've ever seen those American Schuster guitars that Rich Escalante used to make. Well, they look like the tail fin of a 57 Chevy. And they actually have the chrome, you know, back and like when you press the whammy bar down, the tail light comes on.
Oh, wow.
It looks just like a 57 Chevy.
What's this called? I'm going to write this down.
It's an American Schuster.
Okay.
And a guy, now in the beginning, a guy named Rich Escalante made them up in New Jersey. And so I was coming up on my 10th anniversary with Crystal Gayle, and one of the guys that worked for her, John Donegan, one day he asked me, you know, what kind of pickups do you like in your guitars, you know, and what kind of tuning keys do you use? And I just thought he was, you know, idle conversation, you know. So I told him, well, at the time I had actually EMG pickups that I was using a lot in the 80s, and told him all this information. And then, you know, one day we got a call from Crystal and everybody said they wanted to have a luncheon, wanted to take us all out to lunch, the whole band. And so this was coming up on my 10th anniversary of working with her. We got to the luncheon and they asked me to come up front. And they said, you know, we were thinking about giving you a watch, but we thought we'd give you this. And pulled out this beautiful American, one-of-a-kind American Schuster guitars and gave it to me.
That's nice,
and at the time, I was in a band called Leuzinger, which is actually my email address and everything. And they had that put up on the headstock. And but the reason that guy had been asking me about all the pickups and everything is because that's what was in the guitar. And so that just it really touched me. I still have.
That's a very cool, one of a kind. That's a really nice story, man.
Yeah.
Again, I think it shows, you know, the chemistry you've had with these folks, and you know the value added you've given, and the, you know, obviously what they thought of in kind. You know, I think it says a lot on both sides. Chris, you've been doing this so long. I don't even know if you could put this into words, but how does playing guitar make you feel?
Well, I think you as a player probably know, probably the same as everybody. Sometimes it makes me feel great, and sometimes it makes me totally frustrated. And it depends on how I'm playing that day. I mean, you know, some days you pick up the guitar and everything just flows out and it's easy. And, you know, other days you pick it up and you can't hit a lick to save your life, you know, and it's not smooth and you're struggling. And I mean, that still happens after playing as long as I have. And, you know, on the good days, there's nothing like it. And on the bad days, I just sort of struggle through, you know, and do my best.
Yeah, I feel you on that, every one of those. I like that it's like pouring emotions. You know, I almost look at the guitar and then it's like anything that's on your mind just comes out of, like, you know, like pouring a tea, you know, the top of a teacup is the head of the headstock, you know, and it just feels good to do that, you know, to sort of unload or unburden or whatever the word is.
Well, you know, I'd agree with you there. You know, you can definitely channel your emotions into the guitar, you know, sadness, anger, you know, frustration, you know, you can definitely channel it into your music, and that's a beautiful outlet.
Oh yeah, it's the best, I feel. Most top performers are always trying to grow as a player and trying to stretch. I was curious, in your case, how do you think your playing along those lines might have changed over the last 5 years? So are you continuing to try to stretch? Well,
you know, one of the things I absolutely love about guitar is that, you know, you learn something new. Like every time I pick up the guitar, I learn something new. And, you know, working on guitars, on sessions and stuff like that, you know, the other day I was working on a session and playing acoustic, and, Kenny Greenberg and Adam Schoenfeld were playing electric.
That's not bad partners.
Sitting there strumming the acoustic and listening to everything they're playing, it's just, and so, I'm always learning, always listening, and I love that, and always trying to stretch my playing, always trying to play better than I can. And recently, I've happened across like some new positions on the guitar, some new ways of playing things that I've always heard. Oh no, my dog's gonna howl.
It's all right. It's all good, man.
Things that I've always heard but never been able to play, and now all of a sudden I might come across this position. Sorry about that.
No,
dog.
Chris, is he all right? He sounds like he's killing his dinner or something.
He howls at the home phone when it rings.
Oh,
so.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
But so I've come across these new positions and things, and it's great, and there's so many new ways of learning now. Like when I was first learning those Bloomfield solos, I was picking up a needle on a record player and having to move it back to just the moment the solo started, and nowadays I've got a phrase sampler, that'll slow down a solo and keep it in pitch.
Keep it in pitch is great, yeah.
And my favorite thing is to look at pedal demos on YouTube. Like if you look up any crunch pedal demo,
mm-hmm.
Any overdrive pedal, you got a guy sitting there playing for 10 minutes, just blowing all these incredible licks. And I've picked up a lot of stuff just recently late at night, just sitting there watching these pedal demos, and I'll grab 3 or 4 great, licks and stuff off that, and it's a. So, I just, after playing as long as I have, I'm still loving it.
That's great.
The other thing at my age, sometimes I think I should be thinking about playing Girl from Ipanema at a bar in the islands.
Well, you could if you want.
Yeah, but really I'm looking for the next best distortion box, and
great.
Still, trying to keep current. And
I don't think music has an age. I mean, really, there's no what you should be doing, especially nowadays. This is such an anything goes world, I don't think that. Right. I think there's so many of those stereotypes have been pulled off and unlocked. Somebody would be thrilled to come sit and check you out and play a blues gig as long as you sounded like you.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. One day we were cutting the track in the studio, and Dan Dugmore was there, and we got done cutting this really rocking track, and he looked around the room, and everybody in the room was. A little older, he said, "Boy, these kids would really freak out if they could see these old guys in here."
Very true. Very
playing
true.
like this. If they could, connect it with what they're hearing.
Well, you look at everybody, that we listen to as kids is now touring.
Yeah,
that's still alive anyway. They're all touring, so it's cool. I'm glad. Of course, everybody, it's a great payday, but it's nice that they're selling tickets for all these shows.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
All right, let's go into the hood. Something or someone you miss from your childhood.
Well, my mom, definitely she passed away about 12 years ago. And, she just, she did a lot, raised me quite a bit. And made sure I made it to every single guitar lesson, every single Boy Scout meeting. And, after I finally got over the hippie guitar player playing in bars and became fairly successful playing with Crystal and everything, she was just my biggest fan, and always so excited to hear about things, and really miss her a lot.
That's great. Well, I'm real sorry for your loss, and I'm real happy that you have those memories, though.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Chris, tell me something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear or would find a little odd.
Well, I was thinking about that. I'm not sure. I mean, one thing I love playing Scrabble.
That's cool, man.
It seemed like a wonderful distraction to me, and I've got about 8 games going on my phone with people I have no idea who they are.
That's cool, man.
I've been playing the same people for probably 5 years, and it's just a great distraction for me.
Good. That's cool, man. Most important person in your life?
Well, beyond family, beyond my wife and my kids and everything, I would have to say Alan Reynolds. Alan was the producer who really believed in me. I mean, other producers have used me through the years, but Alan was the one that really nurtured me and believed in me enough to start using me on some of his main artist records. And we had a relationship which goes back further than Garth. I've been recording with Alan since the mid '70s, and so I'd have to say him. He really gave me some opportunities that were just unbelievable for me.
What do you think made that happen? What did he see in you, or what was, or have you ever asked him even? What was the appeal?
One of the things, like after he retired, I wrote him a letter and just told him how much it meant to me that he was always calling me and the opportunities he gave me and everything. And he wrote me a really nice letter back. And it's funny because I always used to feel like I was pestering him, because after sessions, I'd always call him back and go, hey, was that solo good enough? If you want me to come in and redo anything, I'll come back and redo it. I just always wanted to be good. And he, in his letter, he always said, he said that, I'd never worked with another musician that was so cared about their work as much. A lot of guys would come in and play and just kind of go home and that was it. And he said, you were always, wanting to pursue it further, always thinking about it when you weren't, at the studio. I used to ask him for tapes of the rough mix to take home so I could think of guitar parts to play at home when I knew I was going to overdub. And I guess just being conscientious, he saw that. And I guess he liked my playing too. I mean, he wouldn't have used if he hadn't liked my playing.
Yeah, but there's an X factor there, because as you said, there's literally thousands of guys in Nashville lined up right behind you that play as good or better than you. So there's always a question. There's something that's nothing to do with your playing that causes that chemistry. What you're talking about is basically work ethic, and I have found the older I get, I always felt this way, but I think that's someone's work ethic is such a fantastic barometer for who they are as a human being in general. I find, show me someone with a good work ethic, and like people with good work ethics like that, they're not lazy, they have high levels of integrity, they're trustworthy, they're good to be around, they got high energy. And the opposite's true. A lazy person, can't trust them as much. They're not they're just not, and at least for me, they're not the person I want to hang out with. Work ethic people, I just think that's I've always just tried to impress on my kids how important that is, just to have a good work ethic.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because I would have to say that my mom actually was the one that instilled that in me, and I think back on that, she's always taught me that, even in the stuff I didn't want to do, like schoolwork and stuff, always do your best, always be on time, always just give your best effort, and in the music business, that's so important, because sometimes, you could be doing a gig that you think is the worst gig in the world, but you don't know who's sitting in the audience, and that person there that night, might lead to something incredible in your career, so even just for that, it always just pays to do your best and give your best effort.
Yeah, I think pride of ownership.
No matter what situation you're in.
Yes, and I think that pride of ownership is really important, and people do notice it. Maybe not every time, but if that's how your character is, you get noticed, and people are like, "Hey, this person's on top of it. Let's pay attention here."
And, I kind of want to brag on all the studio guys here in Nashville, most of them for sure. Most of the guys that I work with, people are blown away because we do a lot of custom work here, where somebody who's an unknown, could be a school teacher or somebody from, Iowa comes here to do their first CD, and they're, but they have the guys, they might have, me, and they might have Dan Dugmore, who's played with everybody in the world. They might have Lonnie Wilson, who's played with everybody in the world. I'm just throwing names out, drummers and piano players. And these people have played on everybody from George Strait to Garth Brooks to Linda Ronstadt. And these people who are unknown come in here and are blown away at the level of care that the musicians give them. And the musicians, most of the time, will give those people the same care and energy that they would give a name artist.
Yes.
And I love that about the players here. They're always, everybody just wants to give the person, whoever they're working for, the best that they can get.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what's interesting. When I was in Nashville, I guess a month and a half ago, Rob McNally was kind enough. Do you know Rob?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, great guitar player. He was kind enough to invite me to a session that he was doing, and I'd never been to a studio before, so it was like really cool for me to see. And I will tell you, as an outsider, by far, that is the best bang for your buck that anybody's ever going to get. That you can come into a studio for like $1,000 and get a full band, and there's an expression, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Not true, because you can come in there with a song that's whatever, and these guys will turn it around and make a song. Is it a hit song? Who the hell knows? Who knows? With rare exception, you don't know that answer to most of the songs that you're cutting, right? But I could not believe the value that you get out of that, where someone can come in there and make a song that they wrote and turn it to reality. It was just blew me away. Yeah,
it's wonderful to be a part of, because you're right. No matter what the quality of the song or the quality of the talent of the person that you're working with, some people sing better than others. I'll just say that. But everybody just still gives their best, and treats the person like as if they were George Strait or Garth Brooks or somebody,
Yes, and I was surprised that they didn't. And I guess this is a business of personalities. I was surprised, just in my observation, that if I came in there, I would make less decisions and let, unless I was very confident about something, put this lick here, I want this, I would leave almost the whole thing up to these guys. Because in my mind, and maybe I'm looking at this too simplistic, it's no different in a sense than I got a leak on the roof and the roofer comes over and I'm telling him, no, I think you need to do, I don't know anything about. Exactly. I mean, to me, when I spend money, I hire a professional, do it. If it was in my wheelhouse, I'd be doing it, but I was just blown away at the skills and what we talked about, the work ethic and the desire to get it done right. It was impressive. Has your life been different than what you'd imagine?
Oh, yes, vastly different than what I imagined.
You didn't figure you'd grow up playing for a guy who sold 130 million albums for 30 years, huh?
No, I didn't. I mean, when I moved to Nashville, I had no idea what a studio musician was. I played here to be in a club band and be with my buddies, and I had no idea that this was available, and then that it was able to happen. It's just been a blessing beyond imagination for me, and I'm still grateful every single day.
That's great. I'm happy for you. You mentioned your wife before. How long you guys been together?
We've been together. We just had our 26th anniversary.
Man, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
How'd you guys meet?
Well, we met, actually, I was playing at a dance here in Nashville, Very cool. We met there.
They didn't have Match.com back then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
And, I have to give her a shout out. Mary is just, right after we got together, my session career started kind of peaking, and, it wasn't possible to say no to a lot of things. And so I was on quite a bit, and I have to give her a lot of credit for sticking with me through all of that. I'm very grateful for that.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's. I think most people I know that are successful in any business, you really need a strong. Anything you're going to do, you're going to be working, and even if you're physically not gone, you're mentally gone, and you're in an office or whatever. And it's you got to have a supportive, strong person. So happy for you, man. Any bad habits, Chris?
Cookies. And caffeine.
I hear you on the caffeine.
Those are my two bad habits these days. And staying up too late.
Playing Scrabble.
Yeah.
You have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Well, yeah, I mean, my kids. I love doing whatever they're doing. My son and I, one of my best things growing up was Boy Scouts. And so both my son is a Boy Scout, my daughter's a Girl Scout. And I'm trying to be I was very active in the Boy Scouts with my son. He a couple of years ago achieved his Eagle rank, and
awesome.
We spent a lot of time camping, hiking, doing all that stuff. And then my daughter's in Girl Scouts. I can't do as much with them because it's Girl Scouts, but I do what I can. And they both, my daughter's in gymnastics. My son was in marching band. It's just, I just enjoyed, that's kind of my hobbies. It's whatever they're into. I love going to watch them do it.
Cool. Chris, have you ever had a specific experience that either changed your life or altered the way you think about things?
Yeah, having kids. Just having kids. It just, as you know, being a dad, it just totally changes your priorities about everything. Mm. And I had no prior, you just don't know what it's like till you do it.
Yeah.
And when you do it, the amount and the depth of the love and unconditional love that springs up, and then, the amount of challenges that come up. Yeah. And then, it's kind of like, I love all the accolades and things from the music business, but it's really not the same as when you see your kids excel at something. Sure. It's just a much higher, more important thing for me when I see my son or my daughter just really excel and do well and they're happy at something. It's more important to me these days.
Well, it's no contest, as a matter of fact. It's just not even, the professional and the is not nice, but it's like you said, it's so much. It's rewarding in a different level. So I
it definitely is.
Totally get you on that. Mm-hmm. Chris, I'm gonna ask you two more questions.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and do one thing differently, either in your business or your personal life, what would that one thing be?
Well, in my business life, it's funny because you have it hanging on your wall. My joke answer to this question is I wouldn't have sold my cherry red 60s Tiffany 335 that I played when I was 15 years old.
Yeah, I bet.
That's one thing. You got one hanging on your wall. Mine has just like that. It said custom made on it and had the big fee. And, I still wish I had that guitar.
Oh, this guitar is never leaving me ever. I play this guitar ever since I've gotten it. And I haven't played any of my other guitars. I just love it. Everything about it. It's got 57 classic 57s. It just feels, the neck is slim and I love that 60s slimline neck. I'm not a big guy, so it fits perfectly. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful guitar. I wish I still had mine. But, more realistically, it's funny. I kind of, I believe stuff good and bad happens for a reason, and it all leads you to where you're supposed to be. So while there's a lot of poor decisions that I made that I might like to change, go back and change, I believe maybe they happen for a reason, and maybe the kind of person I am today and wouldn't want to change any of the good stuff. But, I guess, if there's anything I would tell myself today is go back and practice more.
Sure.
If I tell a younger self, spend more time woodshedding and practicing.
Yeah, I agree with you about that, making mistakes sucks, but you don't know had you not done, maybe it saved you from something else,
right?
Fate far worse, you just don't know, you just don't know these things. Last question. What has been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years?
Well, I think it would becoming more relaxed. And, I have a lot of gratitude for everything that's occurred in my career, for all the opportunities I've been given. And so I've become just a lot more relaxed, and I feel like I have a lot more time to maybe donate to helping other folks. Sometimes I talk to younger players, and people who want to break into the music business and stuff. Now that there's Facebook, I get a lot of people on Facebook asking me things, and I try to respond when I can. And I think it's just being more relaxed and not so concerned about performing. I kind of know what I do now and just try to do that to the best of my ability and not being so uptight about stuff and not so worried about things.
How much
of
of that?
If I don't get the next session call or stuff like that. Stuff I used to really pore over and lose sleep over, I don't as much anymore.
How much of that do you think has been deliberate on your part, like just a function of, I need to not let this crap get to me and I want to be a more relaxed person, or how much of that has just been attributable to the aging process where you tend to slow down?
I think it's kind of even. I mean, part of it, is just aging, seasoning, getting used to having good things and bad things happen in the business, and knowing that even if bad things happen, you're still going to go on and exist, and it's not the end of the world. And then part of it is just, after years and years of ups and downs in the business, you just finally go, man, it's not worth it to sweat this anymore. It's not worth it to lose the sleep over it. People are going to hire whoever they hire. If you're losing sleep over not getting the work you want, I mean, people are just going to hire whoever they hire. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your level of playing. It could be totally something different. So it's not worth really just losing sleep over all the time.
Yeah, especially when losing sleep isn't going to change the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you realize that, it's like, why am I wasting so much energy on this? This is like a bad decision all around. Yeah. That's what kind of I went through. Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for your time. You're like just a sweet guy. You're like, I've been so generous with your stories and sharing your backstory. I want to let people know about your new album that you're working on that should be out around the time of this interview that comes out. It's Chris Leuzinger. Did I mess that up again?
Leuzinger.
Leuzinger. I got it right. It's Chris Leuzinger. Leuzinger. And you can go to chrisleuzinger.com. His new album, which is untitled as of yet, is going to be on iTunes, CD Baby, and on his website. And just check. He's got a really nice website. He just had it redone. It looks great. And so go to Chris's website and stop by, check him out. Anything else you'd like to promote, Chris, or anything else you're working on now that you want to let people know about?
Not really. I mean, that's pretty much it. End of the year, I believe we are going to be doing some recording with Garth next year, right. which I would look forward to. So I'll tell people to be on the lookout for that.
You have a lot of videos of you playing online on YouTube or anything like that?
I don't really. I didn't do any myself because, like I say, I'm not really a hot lick player, so it's not going to be anything that's going to dazzle anybody. But occasionally somebody will post a live video of me playing with somebody somewhere.
Cool. So check Chris out, everybody. And if you're looking to, if there's some way you actually are in Nashville and have not heard of Chris, go check him out and bring him in on a session because he's a pretty smart, seasoned guy. Knows a lot.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to add that, for me, I'm just unbelievably grateful. I'm very blessed. One thing I have to just say, I'm blessed to God for the gift of music. And I want to give credit there because, I wouldn't have this gift without my Heavenly Father. And then I also want to just thank all the folks that have helped me along the way. It's in this business, you don't get anywhere without a lot of helping hands. And I'm very grateful to everybody that's been a help to me through the years.
Man, thank you so much. Your attitude of gratitude is awesome. Hey, thanks again for spending time with us, man. I appreciate it, Chris.
You bet. Thank you so much for the interest. I appreciate it. And thanks once again for interviewing all our buddies here. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Check out Chris Leuzinger online. And thanks for spending time with us again, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes along with some cool stuff for guitar players. Now, most important, be nice, go play guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.